It is, it's a Friday. That's when we are recording this. When you are listening or watching is up to you. But it's the Bob McCown podcast brought to you by BetRivers. Download the BetRivers online casino and sportsbook app today. Hello, John Shannon.
How are you, Robert?
I'm all right.
Good. You ready for some outdoor hockey?
Nope. Couldn't care less.
The tailgating in Raleigh, North Carolina tomorrow will be fantastic.
The drinking will also be heavy.
We don't endorse that.
No, exactly.
We don't endorse that.
Look, you know me.
But the barbecue. Have you ever had pulled pork in Raleigh? Oh my God!
Not in Raleigh. I've never been to Raleigh. Actually,
great pulled pork in Raleigh. Oh my God!
I imagine they do.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah. Okay.
The fact that relates in any way to a hockey game is beyond me.
Well, you'll find out. Not
necessarily. I'd have to watch. And I have no real interest in watching another outdoor game on slushy ice.
The ice is very good now. Well, Bill, remember when Bill used to say every Saturday night on Hockey Night in Canada, the ice looks fast at the Gardens tonight? Bill had no clue.
Well, of course not. Neither did anybody else. But you have to acknowledge by late in the period, it gets a little slushy out there.
Okay, doctor.
We will talk hockey, but we will talk about some other issues that are far more serious than the quality of the ice in Raleigh, North Carolina, or South Carolina. North Carolina.
Jeez, Bob.
Tomorrow.
What did you get? C+ in geography?
No, I got D. Yeah. Bill Daly of the National Hockey League will join us in just a moment. Stick around. We'll be back in a minute.
With his square jaw and piercing blue eyes, he's been called a Canadian sportscasting legend, a paragon of pucks, pundit of pigskin, and oracle of the outfield, who for more than 25 years has been bringing his keen insights to sports fans everywhere. He is Dan O'Toole.
And now I'm doing a podcast from my basement. Boomsies with me, Dan O'Toole. It's about sports and life and more sports.
Find Boomsies wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
Boomsies!
Hi, this is Bob McCown for BetRivers.com. Hey, if you're looking for a sports book or casino app, you should check out the BetRivers Sports and Casino app today. Play all of your favorite casino games for real money, anywhere and anytime. Plus, get in the action with each sports game with hundreds of sports betting options. And get ready to feel like a VIP because you'll earn both loyalty level points and bonus store points on every real money wager you make. You must be 19 plus, available in Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you have questions or concerns about your gambling or someone close to you, contact Connex Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 or speak to an advisor free of charge. BetRivers.com. McCown and Shannon back with you, and Bill Daly of the NHL joins us now. I know you were at the office late last night. Can I assume you were working on the Bally situation last evening? That seems to be the number one concern right now. No?
Yeah, no, I can't say that I was. Obviously, we had some Bally-related work yesterday and emails and obviously media responses and the like. But no, I mean, I don't think anything that's happened to this point is surprising to anybody here or really anybody probably across Major League Sports. So we've all been working on the issues for some time now, and we'll see what happens as we move forward.
Have you been talking to to Major League Baseball and the NBA, Bill? Are you working together?
We're not working together. Certainly from time to time, information that's going on there makes its way here and vice versa. But no, it's not a coordinated response to what's going on. Our situations are a little bit different. Obviously, we have less clubs who have Bally relationships, less total revenue involved. Otherwise similarly situated. We're at a better time of our season, obviously, right, for any potential risk longer term than baseball might be. But anyway, it's part of the job.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a whole bunch of questions regarding the Bally situation. First of all, what have you got, 12 or 13 teams that would be impacted by a Bally fold?
12. But again, a Bally fold, I don't think anybody anticipates. A Bally's bankruptcy is possibly more likely, although not a certainty either. So, again, the missed interest payment was something that I think everybody expected. They have a 30-day grace period, and I think they continue to work on a restructure.
Do you think Bally is the entity for sale then, as you understand it? Is there a possibility of a white knight coming in?
I certainly think they're looking for long-term equity holders, yes.
Yeah. Do you have any sense as to whether that is likely to unfold in the next 30 days? Because that's what they're talking about. 30 days is 25 days or whatever it is.
Well, the 30 days is their runway right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens after that.
So, but Bill, I think that when, the layman or the hockey fan reads this stuff in the trades and starts to get nervous, that's, his team's games won't be seen. Have you received any assurances that that's not going to happen at this point?
I say we've been in regular communication with Bally's, and we don't think that's a material risk for us, at least for the balance of this season.
And I would suspect that one of the reasons you're not panicked is because you do have strong contracts, at least for the playoffs, with your two U.S. networks that cover every game, correct?
Yeah. Once you're in the playoffs, you're not even in kind of the Bally universe, other than kind of on a side-by-side basis in the first round. So it's again, as I said, the calendar lays out a little bit better for us than perhaps for Major League Baseball.
So essentially, I'm imagining what you're trying to work through is, if this comes to pass, what do you do next season? Where are you with these 12 or 13 teams next season if there's no Bally's?
So again, I don't think Bally's fails to exist. I don't. That's the most likely outcome of this. I do think this gets restructured in a way that will work long term. But look, our primary focus is making sure our fans have access to our games, and so I think we've all made contingency plans to make sure that happens.
From an economic point of view, can I ask? Have these teams or the league been paid already for all of this season, or are there still outstanding? Is there still outstanding debt?
I think the payment structures in each contract is unique to the contract. Having said that, you would assume that worst case it's pay as you go.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's a large outstanding amount that needs to be paid on account of the 22-23 season.
Okay, so I'm a conspiracy theorist sometimes, Bill. Gary, before Christmas, came and said that the cap could go up as much as $4.5. He did say could, and then later on it became $1 million. Is there any chance that these two things are linked?
What two things are linked?
Well, the change in the prognostication of the cap, and the Bally scenario of them not having very much money left.
Oh no, they're not linked at all.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
This is revenue to individual teams, not to the league, correct?
That's correct. Although, to John's point on his conspiracy theorist, it obviously goes into HRR.
Right.
But again, the whole sky is falling concern that was expressed this week. None of this is playing out as a surprise to anybody who's involved in these relationships. So there's nothing that's happened to this point that wasn't expected to happen.
And so I'm sure you guys have, your legal group have been in touch with every general counsel of the clubs involved. Does this hinder the the contracts being null and void at some point in the summer, like it appears to have happened, or baseball seems to be aggressive with?
That's a multi-part question. Obviously, we've communication with the clubs regularly on this, both Bally clubs and the non-Bally clubs and the RSN landscape generally. Again, we're not anticipating at this point in time a situation where Bally's ceases to broadcast NHL games. But if that were to happen, we have a game plan as to how to deal with that.
Well, you want to tell us what that game plan would be? Because you've got 13 individual teams that would have to do other deals, correct?
It's 12.
12.
And I mean, look, there's a combination of ways you can produce and distribute a sports product, and obviously we've explored that combination of ways, and we would be prepared in that eventuality, which we think at this point is unlikely, at least in the short term.
Okay.
And truthfully, Bob, I mean, it certainly sounds the way it works. This is more of a concern if it does occur for October as opposed to April.
Sure.
April, as
I get it,
which is different than what Major League Baseball is going through.
No, it gives the NHL time to do a deal or work on the problem.
Sure.
The question is whether Bally's continues to exist or not. And Bill, you're suggesting you think probably they will still exist in some form through a bankruptcy, right?
I think it doesn't have to be through a bankruptcy. It could be through a voluntary structure. And I think there are a lot of options. I think the liquidation option, which you're positing, is probably the least likely.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Really? Well, we shall see, I guess.
I surmised a couple of weeks ago, Bill, when this started to percolate, was that if you looked at some of the regions, there you have lots of strength in places like Ohio, where they do a very good job on a regional sports network basis, and they have a ton of professional sports teams. Would you ever dismiss your teams and other professional sports teams and putting themselves into an ownership position? Does that make sense?
It may make sense in certain cases, sure. And we've some of our clubs have partnered with clubs in other leagues on broadcast initiatives in the past, as you know, John. So there's a myriad of possibilities here in terms of how this plays out. The important message is there's no danger that's kind of imminent at this point. Nothing happened this week that kind of changed the prospects of how this plays out.
So, you've obviously you're involved with this deeply. Do you have some sense as to why this has happened? I know Bally's purchase and the price they paid was high, but they haven't gotten the subscribers that they expected to get, and that has impacted their revenue. But, is there a solution to any of this? Or do you see us at some point in time in the immediate future going back to, one-on-one relationships, maybe with local television stations and stuff?
Well,
where the revenue is
over the top, Bob. The new phrase is over the top, right, Bill?
Yeah, I think this is a product of the evolution of the sports broadcasting landscape, quite frankly, right? It's a lot of cord cutters and cord nevers, and the number of subscribers is going down because they consume the product in different ways. Mm-hmm. And so, the good news for us and for sports is the number of people, the viewers, that number is not going down, and in fact is going up. So it's really how they're consuming the games, and on what platform and what manner. That's what's changing, and that's kind of you can't stop the progression of evolution. It is what it is.
Do you think sports leagues have, and I know you can't speak for the other ones, but do you think that you guys have been ahead of the curve, understanding that this was going to happen? I mean, you guys are pretty technologically savvy. You've got a bunch of good people there that understand all this stuff. Did you foresee red flags before everything became public?
Did we perceive red flags? Well, I think we've been aware of this situation and where it was going and where it would likely at least get to in the interim term for a while. Yeah. And as I said, we've been able to prepare. I think the other sports leagues are generally in the same boat as that. And we'll see how it plays out, and we'll obviously try to do what we can to minimize any negative impact.
And I'm sorry to belabor this, but do you see a change in HRR because of this?
Not a meaningful one, no.
Okay.
Not for the 22-23 season, no.
Can you possibly put your...
What about next year?
Yeah.
But, obviously, that'll depend on how this plays out.
Okay.
But we've kind of already gone over that.
Yeah. Yes.
But Gary has lowered the expectations of the teams on what the cap will be. Can you explain the $3 million, $3.5 million difference?
Yeah, I don't think. Again, one was not related to the other.
Right.
I think what Gary was trying to do after our October board meeting was make the media and the public aware that there was a possibility that our escrow balance would be paid off sooner, and really in some circles far sooner that we had originally projected. And so I think he was just preparing for the world for that possibility. What December was about was, here are what our current projections are. Our current projections won't have us paying off that balance by the end of this season, but they're within range such that situation could change. But if it doesn't change, then we're still at $1 million.
Oh, okay.
So, okay, I think we've beat that horse to death for you. Yeah, sorry, but these things have to be asked, because I mean, I actually get emails from announcers saying, "Am I going to get paid next week?" So,
yeah, I understand. I totally.
What's going on in Ottawa? Where are you with the Senators, and what do you think your timeline is on an ownership group?
Well, I think we're very close to being in a solicitation for bid process. We've vetted through kind of the background applications of the various interested parties. So I think we're about ready to move into that next phase. And that could be, kind of as early as the end of this week or the beginning of next, which will be a several week process. And then we'll kind of see what bids come in and kind of see where we are at that point.
So I know you don't like putting timelines on this, but do you see something done before the end of the regular season?
That's hard. It's really hard for me to project. And, I think that question, I could have a better sense of that after we start to see what bids are coming in.
And what type, when you say background and checks, when you go through I would call them serious bids. What would you? Are you just looking at dollars? I mean, are you looking at how solid it is, or what else would you be looking at?
No, I think you look at all aspects. It's important to have solid ownership and the financial wherewithal of the ownership and the structure of the ownership groups, and potential synergies with the team or the market. Those are all relevant factors. I think Galiotto Sports Partners, who are running the bidding process, obviously they want to maximize value. I think ultimately we'd like to maximize value. We know the club would like to maximize value, but value has a number of ways of being defined. So I think you look at a variety of factors and ultimately you pursue the best bid.
Do you have to check the box that LeBreton's a reality before you approve anybody?
No, I would add that and what the arena plans are as part of the relevant factors you're evaluating with each bid. There may be bids that don't have LeBreton Flats as part of their future projection for this franchise. Again, it depends, what they have planned. So I think it's certainly a relevant part of the mix, but I don't think it's an essential element.
I don't know if you've had this situation before, but this bidding process on Ottawa has sort of revolved around Ryan Reynolds. I mean, his name is in almost every conversation you have about the Ottawa Senators. Is that a factor to you? Do you care whether Ryan Reynolds is involved or not? I mean, is his celebrity important to the National Hockey League? Does this matter? Is this influential?
No, what I say, how I try to answer that question is this transaction won't rise or fall whether Ryan is part of a winning bid. Having said that, and we've said it repeatedly, obviously Ryan Reynolds would bring a lot to the table here, and to have him as part of an NHL ownership team promoting our sport and promoting that franchise would be a very positive thing for the National Hockey League. So again, it's not a be all and end all, but certainly I think it's a plus factor.
He's an asset then, as you perceive.
I would expect that he would be a major asset.
Bill likes Deadpool.
And what do you see him bringing to the table? I mean, besides his name and his reputation, production.
I think I think he can bring a number of things, but certainly his profile and his promotion of the sport and the franchise, I think, would be very meaningful. It has been in the soccer world, and I think it would be in our world. And I think that's a positive.
Okay.
When the numbers came out, when the official sale was announced, I was shocked at the numbers that people were saying were actually people wanting to kick tires on this. Did it surprise you?
The number of people interested?
Yes.
Yes, but I think the proof will be in the pudding as to what the actual bids are, right? So we haven't really gotten to that point yet. I think GSP, which is the investment banker, is setting the expectations out there, and those have been communicated. But we'll see who ultimately steps up at the table.
For the layman again, can you explain what Galliotto does? I mean, are they like a real estate agent and representing somebody for your house?
Yeah, I mean, they're like a typical investment banker, but they happen to specialize in the purchase and sale and financings and securitizations of sports properties. So not just teams, but other arena projects and those types of things. So they have a sports expertise. They've been doing it for a very long time. They actually came from another investment banking firm and formed kind of their own boutique sports investment banking firm, and that's what GSP is currently.
How many teams have you been involved with them before with other teams?
With GSP specifically, I don't. It's a good question. I'm not sure of the answer to that, but certainly Sal, we've had a long-term relationship with, and he's been involved in a number of our transactions since I've been at the National Hockey League.
So we are told that the approximate price of this franchise would be about $800. Is that a number that you are comfortable with? That you believe it'll be somewhere around that?
I think it will exceed that.
You do?
Yes.
Do you think you add a zero? Do you think you get to $1 billion?
I would think it's a very possible, a real possibility.
And so, is that because of the competition and because there are so many groups that have indicated an interest in the franchise?
Well, I mean, competition always helps. There's no doubt about that. But sure. I do, the inherent value of owning a franchise in the National Hockey League, I think, is has gone up significantly over time and can increase.
So the fascination for me is that the names that have been made public, Rudy Brady's group and his kids, Michael Andlauer, who we know very well, Rocco Tullio, we know well, that the family in Burlington that we know well. Is there a chance that somehow, some way, you guys would encourage them to work together? Is that a factor in all this too?
Again, it's a little bit premature to get to that point, because let's see what bids come in and where everybody is and what their plans are, where we start messing with things.
Gary, I wouldn't call what you and Gary do as messing with things. You're influencers.
Right, exactly.
We are halfway done. We have to take a quick break, Bill. Bill Daly is with us. We'll be back in a minute. We're with Bill Daly of the National Hockey League. Let's change subject again, because we've got a few things to talk about. I want to discuss the World Cup. I must tell you, I am shocked that the National Hockey League has been mumbling and bumbling around with the World Cup for years and years and years, and you guys don't seem to. You have an idea of what you want to do, but you don't do anything. Where are you on the World Cup right now?
So, and the World Cup now is the real answer, and it's on hold because of what's going on in the world. And the Russian-Ukrainian conflict has kind of turned international competition on its ear to a certain extent. Obviously, Russian participation in hockey international competition is an important thing, and yet it's not the right time to reintegrate them into international competition. So that's the handicap, at least at this point, for the World Cup moving forward. If that status quo doesn't change, we will continue to monitor this as it goes on. We'll work with the Players Association. We'll work with the players, most importantly, probably, with respect to how they want to proceed, and creating our own international competition.
Well, as you know, the World Junior competition was just held a couple of months ago. And to be honest with you, didn't miss the fact that the Russians didn't have a representative there. Now, having said that, the point of difference, I guess, is that you have a significant number of Russian players in your league who would then not have an opportunity to play in the World Cup. Is that the consideration?
That's certainly a major factor. And in fact, we heard from our players directly that they had no interest in, participating in a World Cup that the Russian-born players in our league didn't have the opportunity to participate in.
Could you see yourself going against what the IIHF has dictated about Russia and the Belarusians?
Yeah, I don't think we're tied necessarily to where the IIHF is on that issue. And I don't think they're necessarily tied with where the IOC is on that issue, but I do think that'll all start to evolve beyond where we are now. You've started to see it already a little bit at the IOC level, where I think President Bach, is more interested in reintegrating Russian athletes into international competitions than others may be at this point in time. So I think it's a moving and evolving landscape. And we're certainly hopeful that we get to a point where we're comfortable moving forward with World Cup plans. And ultimately, we hope that includes Russian participation.
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen the last two Olympics that the Russian athletes have participated, albeit they've had huge sanctions and really haven't played under the Russian flag or worn a Russian uniform. But we all called them the Russians. Isn't that optically a terrible mistake at this point, Bill?
Well, I mean, I think they have I think the IOC's position to this point is that's not how we're going to approach this situation.
Right.
But again, I could see that changing as we go forward. I don't know about you. I thought it was kind of a joke that they could be under all the sanctions that they were
agree. I agree with you.
And everybody identified them as the Russian team, right? Yeah. So, I mean, they were representing their country, look, the easiest way for this to all resolve itself is if there was peace in Ukraine. So we'll see how likely that is in the near term.
Well, I guess what you're saying then is there will not be a World Cup as long as Russia is in Ukraine, as long as that conflict continues. It seems unlikely, at least.
Well, that's going to be an important consideration, yes. Whether our position on that or whether others' position on that may change going forward, I couldn't tell you. But certainly at this point in time, that's our position. Yeah.
And who knows how long that conflict will last?
And who knows how long the sanctions will last? I mean, they could withdraw tomorrow, and NATO and other governing bodies might sanction them for 5 years. I mean, that reality is a factor in all this. I agree with you. The whole thing about the last two winter games, Bill, you're right about it. And, an invasion of another country is much more serious than doping scandals. So I just can't see it. I can't see it changing in the near future.
Yeah. So that's the quandary for sure.
Yeah. So don't get too excited, hockey fans, about the future of the World Cup, because it's probably a long way away.
Okay, I got a couple of real hockey things that are, actual hockey games and NHL stuff that's happening right now, Bill.
All right.
Trade deadline, March 3rd. We've got teams now holding players out 2 weeks beforehand. Any concern for you? I mean, you have rules in place in exhibition games to sell tickets that they put a competitive team on the ice. And I know that both Arizona and Columbus have put competitive teams on the ice. Are you concerned about, quality hockey players being held out of competition for this type of thing?
So I would say what we've seen this year to this point is a little bit out of the ordinary or unusual. I'm not overly concerned at this point. If I saw more of it and it became a bigger issue or a trend, then maybe that's something we obviously have to bring to the general managers of the board and take their temperature on. But look, these teams are still very competitive on a night to. They're still trying to win games. They are trying to also look out for the long-term future of their franchise and maximize the value of that long-term future, and kind of protecting assets as a way of doing that is legitimate. So, again, it's not something that's hit the radar screen as a concern at this point, but it's being monitored.
But I tell you what, though, when you consider what those two teams have done, and again, I have friends in both places, so it's difficult to talk about. But when you consider that they're supposed to be the ones in the Connor Bedard, derby, taking a quality player out, in theory, at some point might affect whether they win or lose, and that has to be a concern.
Yeah, it may, but again, there are a lot of things that affect whether you win or lose at the end of the day. And so we've always taken the position that as long as a club is paying the player under his contract, they're entitled to do and direct him in any way and utilize them in any way they please. I mean, is it really any different than giving a guy less ice time than he otherwise would get? There are degrees of this, and as I said, if this became something widespread and going on throughout the league and affecting a large portion of our regular season schedule, then maybe it becomes a real concern, but it isn't at this point.
But you are obviously anti-tanking. You do not want your teams to try and lose, to try and get the first round pick. You have made many moves, not the least of which is the draft lottery, to not necessarily prohibit, but discourage that philosophy. And it seems that these teams, for whatever reason, because these players want to be traded or they want to trade these players, they are sitting them out. Isn't that the same thing?
On some level, but I could argue, as I just said, a host of things could fall into that same category. And I have no concerns about our clubs trying to win every game they put players on the ice for. So, and I think the results bear it. I mean, if you look at the results of our game, I think there were 17. This is as of the All-Star break, because I educated myself on it, but I think there were maybe 7 teams that were more than 10 points out of a playoff berth. Those teams had collectively a better record than the 15 teams ahead of them. So, the fact of the matter is our sport remains competitive and will always be competitive. People want to win.
How many games per team in the regular season next year?
I know for a fact it'll be 82. It doesn't change overnight. We have Steve Hatzapetros who's progressed very far along in constructing a schedule for 32 teams next year, and it doesn't involve anything other than 82 games.
Can we assure fans that Calgary at Edmonton, the Rangers and the Islanders will play more than 3 games against each other next year?
Well, I don't know where they fall in the. I think you can, because I think the fact that they only played 3 games this year was a factor of where they fell in the rotation within their division. So I expect that they'll fall on the other side of that rotation next year. The matrix is something that was deemed at the time it was adopted as something that was competitively most fair, and was embraced and endorsed by all of the clubs. And I can tell you, as recently, I mean, the last time we took a poll on it, which I think was 2 years ago, there was a high level of satisfaction with the current matrix and the current playoff system.
Well, I guess that can be true, but it doesn't mean that you can't put 32 stupid people into a room. Because does it make any sense to you, Bill, honestly, that Edmonton will play Calgary 3 times this year and they are done meeting each other? Is that not right? They were done in like November?
They were December 27th, yeah. December
27th was the last game between them. And I mean, rivalries are something that you want, that you've built. You want Islanders, Rangers, you want Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, Calgary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How does this make any sense to you?
We've built a schedule that promotes rivalries. That's what our playoff system does, et cetera, et cetera. What has happened is you build a schedule that's competitively fair. So you don't want teams, because of the wild card, and you may not like the wild card, but the wild card was something that actually the Players Association requested and insisted on in collective bargaining. But you're competing against teams in another division in your conference for the same playoff berths, right? Yeah. So you need to replicate the schedules they play competitively. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're mixing apples and oranges. And that was the feeling of everybody at the time. And that's why it was done the way it was done.
Wasn't the wild card, one of the reasons for the wild card coming about was you didn't have an even numbered amount of teams and you had 15 teams in one division, one conference, and 16 in the other?
No, it actually it had nothing to do with the wild. Matter of fact, there was an uneasiness or discomfort from the players for some period of time that there was less teams in one conference than in the other conference, and thus you had mathematically you had a better chance to make the playoffs in one conference than in the other conference. but that's obviously been changed. But as long as you're competing against teams in another division for the same playoff berths, you've got to try to equalize their schedules.
I know it was unscientific, and I know you follow me on Twitter, so I did a Twitter poll and asked whether people liked the format the way it was or wanted to change it. And the one that came out the most was 1 versus 8. Now this was hockey fans, and it was more than 70% of the hockey fans wanted 1 versus 8. Can you foresee anything like that changing, or is this something that now that it's been collectively bargained is not going to change?
Well, I don't think anything ever is set in stone, right?
Okay.
So you evaluate it, you see if it's working. I think some of the things that we wanted this system to promote, it has promoted. It has led to a far more competitive first round than the most competitive first round we've ever had, and some incredible matchups, and the promotion of rivalries with teams meeting repeated times in first and second rounds. So it's accomplished a lot of the things we wanted it to accomplish. Having said that, I'm not against pointing out its weak points as well. So the question always becomes a balancing question as to, are the strong points more valuable than the weak points? And everything has, every option has both.
Well, I tell you, I don't like the system that exists right now. I'm bored with Toronto playing Tampa or Boston.
To be the devil's advocate, Bob. To be the devil's advocate, that's regional. That's a divisional rivalry.
Who cares?
Well, but I thought we wanted to promote regional rivalries.
Well, I'm interested in that too. Excuse me, to some extent, but Bill, you wanted to jump in.
I would also say that you being in and around Toronto on a regular basis may be influencing your view on this. I would say that some of the people who don't support the current system are in and around Toronto for the reasons you're pointing out, but that's not everybody's experience, and that certainly is not every market's experience. And we don't make decisions based exclusively on what Toronto.
I understand.
Because it used to be Montreal.
I don't expect you to bow down to me.
Before Bill got to the league, it was always just Montreal, so it's okay. Hey, a couple of quick hitters. You guys going to Australia?
It's certainly something that's being considered. We've been, John, the people in Australia. There are a lot of Canadian expats in Australia, also great sportsmen. They've been after us for a long time to go there. Obviously, some of the other sports leagues have gone there. So, it's something that is being strongly considered, but certainly no final decision has been made.
So, the logistics of that trip certainly a lot more difficult than the fact that you've been to Europe as many times as you have. Is that something that could be contemplated for next October?
It could be as early as next October,
okay. or September. I mean, in camp time. So
I mean, look, while it's a totally different part of the world, the logistics are really no different than the logistics we dealt with in dealing with the China games that we did in consecutive years, bringing 2 clubs over to China. The distance is about the same. The training camp logistics would have to be similar to how we worked that out in their preseason schedule and the like. So it's a possibility.
And they have arenas. They have arenas that.
Just going to ask, how many arenas do they have?
Well, they have a number of arenas. Not all of them built for hockey, as you might imagine.
No.
There certainly is a suitable arena that we would be able to use.
That you'd have to take your own ice making?
Would we send our own ice making there? I don't know if I don't think so.
Okay.
But I may be wrong on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are you with virtual ads? You happy with what has happened? What's gone on with it? And I watched a game last night that I watched different virtual ads on the same show. So, which is what was the whole concept. But you have had some feedback from fans that they don't like it.
Yeah, some feedback from some fans that they don't like it. I think it's like anything else, and you've seen a progression of, initiatives on our part, particularly since the start of the pandemic, where we've created new revenue opportunities for our clubs and for the league generally. And this is another one. I actually think the dynamic dasher boards are a much better way of advertising for sure, are much more engaging. Do they take some time to get used to? If you're a hockey fan, I would say yes, and certainly I would include myself in that group. Do I notice them as much anymore as I did at the start of the season? No. Will that progression continue? Of course, and they'll become a big nothing I would assume by the start of next year.
I just don't want, that electric Hyundai that you have. I don't want it. I don't want it racing up the ice faster than Drew Doughty, though. Okay. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine that? Can you fix that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, and it's also a learning process, right? So you learn what works and what doesn't work. Yeah. In terms of the ads you're putting on there.
Speaking of learning curve, I would assume that you guys feel you're out of COVID now, for the most part. What was your biggest learning of the pandemic?
It's good. It's a good question. I mean, obviously, you have to learn how to survive, right? It's about surviving, and doing what you had to do in a very, very difficult situation. And the primary objective was to resume and continue and maximize our business, but do it in a way that was safe and healthy for the players and everybody involved in our game, including the fans. We had to work with governmental entities far more than we typically have to do, and that that's both in the United States but also in Canada. Yeah.
But did your business practices change at all, and have they stayed that way rather than go back reverting to prior to the pandemic?
Well, I think our day-to-day business practices have changed. I think that's true probably in any industry. But I'm sitting here on a Friday afternoon in our New York office, and I can tell you that if I'm one of 10 people in an office that normally has 500, I be a lot. So. We have a flexible work schedule that we put in place as part of the pandemic, and we've adjusted that, made small modifications over time. But the bottom line is people found that they can work from home because they do Zooms like this, and they can work effectively from home. And we certainly have validated that. And as a result, the 5 days mandatory in the office every week is not part of our everyday existence right now.
Oh, I mean, I don't have to sign in anymore.
Correct.
To that end, when's the last time you put on a mask, Mr. Daly?
I actually had a mask on this morning.
Really?
Because I had a doctor's appointment. I went to a medical.
Okay.
You still have to wear masks.
Yeah, I know you won't. They won't let you even in. Unless you put a mask on. They'll give you one if they have to.
And actually, the doctor I saw, he seemed to be still very concerned about COVID. He kept his distance from me, had his mask on. It was very...
Yeah.
You got to be excited about tomorrow. Outdoor game in Carolina. A big crowd.
Wait, you know what? We didn't, we went through a number of years of talking about this, and certainly the Hurricanes pitched hard for it over time. They were very, very confident in their ability to sell it out quickly and for the community to embrace it. They are right. As soon as we announced this game and put tickets on sale, we had a sellout almost immediately, to the point where we're a little bit concerned about crowd control tomorrow in the sense of traffic and the like in and around the stadium. And while those parking lots are built for that stadium, apparently NC State football team doesn't generally sell out their games, so they don't normally have the traffic patterns and potential delays that we might have tomorrow. So we put out an advisory in the market yesterday that fans should arrive early and plan appropriately so that they can be in their seats by puck drop.
That just means more tailgating, Bill. That's all.
That's what I said. I said, what's the big deal? You're a couple of hours before the game and enjoy yourself before the game.
Bingo.
We're looking forward to it. It'll be Carolina's first outdoor game. They're having a terrific season. One of the best teams in the league, and we're looking forward to it.
Mr. Daly, we must get out of here. We thank you very much for your time, as always. Good to see you, and we'll do it again somewhere down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, John. Enjoy your weekends.
You too. Bill Daly of the National Hockey League. We'll come back in a moment. We are back. Our thanks to Bill Daly for being with us.
You grilled him. You were all over him. You were very negative.
You know me.
I don't like that playoff format.
Well, I just told him what I think. And I don't. And I said that to you, and I'll say it to his face.
Yeah.
Mr. Daly, Mr. Bettman, both, I have no issue with confronting them on issues.
We're well aware of that.
I think we're friendly.
Yeah.
And I think
we're fair. I think we're fair.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
Look, there's a playoff format. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like seeing the same team all the time. There's a scheduling issue. I don't like Edmonton, Calgary 3 times in a year, and the last 4 months they don't play. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't. It is a problem. I wish they would address it. I'd like to. I think there were lots of owners at the governor's meeting in December said they'd like to play their best rivals 5 times at least.
Yeah,
and if there was a way to do that, but that compromises how you play the other division in your conference. And then the other conference, and it's as Bill talked about, Steve Hatzapetros, the schedule maker, has a difficult job, and he's already almost finished next year's schedule. And the one thing we do know is we're not going to 84 games next year.
No, but I don't think that was an issue, was it?
I think there was some discussion at some point.
Well, I know there was some discussion about it, but no, I don't. Yeah. Did you think there was a chance they'd go to 84?
You never know, Bob.
I certainly didn't. Anyway,
we got to go.
I'll be interested to see what the schedule looks like for next year. I suspect it'll be very much like this year's.
I think you're right. I think it's part of the matrix, as Bill talked about.
Too bad. We got to get out of here. Have yourself a nice weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Goodbye, everybody.